Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Woke Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. Nico, how you going?
Good. How are you going?
I'm good. What are you doing there for those watching on YouTube? Nick's giving me motion sickness. I feel like I'm watching the Blair Witch Project.
Funny story about that. I was in the army when that first came out at the
Yeah,
movies, and we'd been out bush for 6 or 8 weeks, so cut off from society,
yeah.
doing some training in the outback when I was based in Darwin. And we came back, and when you get back from an 8 week exercise, it's just you just want to escape. The first thing you want to do is brush your teeth and then have the longest, hottest shower you can possibly have.
Okay.
And then you just want to get off the army base and not look at anything that's camouflaged. And so we've all gone out to the movies. So I was living on base with a group of blokes. And so the guys I was living with, we went to the movies. Um, and we came and we went for a few drinks at a pub and came home, and there was a pile of rocks at our doorstep, and someone had put this pile of rocks there. We went into this completely cold. We had no idea what the Blair Witch was about, so we went in there and we thought it was a documentary. We thought it was real.
So
And
I thought it was real too when it first came out.
yeah, and so for those that can't remember or haven't seen it, yeah, there was a pile of rocks that signified something spooky or something fucked up was going to happen or whatever. And so we've got home, and another bloke that got home a bit earlier than us went out to the movies and saw it. And then he heard that we were going out, so he thought he'd fuck with us and put this
Well
pile of
played.
rocks in it.
Well played.
So we've come home, and four big army dudes were coming like, ah! And all jumped into each other's arms and could barely sleep a wink that night.
Keep a lookout at the window.
Yeah, we're setting up grenades and landmines and machine guns. We're out bush again. It's like, right, let's get back into our camos.
Reminds me, was that one of the early episodes of The Simpsons I remember, and Homer's been left alone to look after the kids. And then I can't remember whether it was Lisa or Bart, but they said that the boogeyman was around, and then Homer ended up believing the boogeyman was there, and Marge gets home from wherever she was, and the place is a mess. He's turned the couch up and he's hiding behind the couch, waiting for the boogeyman to come out.
I love when whenever there's so many examples of when I say something and you go, oh, that reminds me of, and it'll be a cartoon of some
Yeah.
description. It'll be like The Simpsons or what are the other ones?
Well, I haven't watched The Simpsons in so long.
South Park and The
Yeah.
Simpsons. You're always referencing.
Well, they covered so many bases,
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's
Yeah,
like we used to play what's that? There was a game me and the family used to play called Taboo. Anyway, you have to basically get your partner. You get a card and it has a word, and you have to get your playing partner to say the word. But there's a
Yeah.
list of maybe 5 or so words that you can't say, right? Otherwise, you don't get it anyway. And they relate very strongly to the main word, and it can be quite hard. But me and my brother used to play, and all we'd do every time. So remember the Simpsons episode when this happened and blah, and Bart gave this to Lisa, and he'd be like, "Yep, bang, bang," and all like that. Wouldn't be on cards at all,
You'd be in cheat mode.
Yeah, it's Simpsons cheat mode on the game Taboo.
Well played. So, and for our listeners, this is our first episode with Hass was back, and we need the Eminem music. Hass is back.
Back again.
Shady with the real Ryan Hassan, please stand up.
That's me. I think
Hey.
that's just a label that people call me. At the end of the
Well,
day.
who are you though? Who is me? What is me?
I think this is a topic for another podcast, Nick.
Yeah, it's too early. We're doing this at 8:30 on a Friday morning.
It is.
Now
But no,
that,
I'm back in Oz. I last episode I think I would have been in quarantine. So we survived quarantine with a 2-year-old, which it sucked. At the end of the day, it was a long 2 weeks, but something that we have to do at the minute. And then
Yep.
I'm down at the minute. I spent a week catching up with some friends. We went and played golf last week, which was
We
awesome.
did so.
We did, and we
You
won't talk.
drove the seventh green with a massive drive.
Yeah, well, you won at the end of the day, so
Yeah,
it was good fun though.
yeah. I played golf with the superintendent. Remember that we bumped into when
Oh,
we
yep.
were on the Nuttall. Played golf with him yesterday. And he had a few other of the ground staff, and he's like, "I can't believe you mate drove this green. Jeez, that's a big drive." So now you're a bit infamous around those parts.
Ah, excellent. There's a few whispers.
A bloke drove this green the other day. So
Well,
it's like Happy,
yeah.
it's like Happy Gilmore. It can't be done. It's like, Mr. Gilmore did that no longer than an hour ago.
Oh, classic. Yes. Well, to be fair, I was on the fringe. I was about, an inch or so off the putting surface, but I did putt.
I'm giving it to you. I'm giving
Thanks,
it to
mate.
you, man.
Thanks, mate. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you didn't actually drive the green, but I'm giving it to you.
Yeah. So I'm acclimatizing. I had a week catching up with some friends, and we've come down to Lakes Entrance now, which is regional part of Victoria. My parents live down here. It's a beautiful part of the world down here, but it's about 4 hours from Melbourne, the major city where we live, and we're just spending a bit of time with the family and relaxing and a bit of work and that kind of thing. But yeah, it has been a period of change for me the last few weeks, and we're going to make that the topic of the podcast today, because as well, collectively, we're going through change sort of the last 6 to 12 months. There's been lockdown, there's been coming out of lockdown, there's been uncertainty about going back into lockdown. So a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change. And, Nick and I have spoken on previous podcasts how, we have to start to become comfortable with change, because change and inevitability, because the universe is in constant change. To push up against change and not want things to change is pushing up against reality, which is going to cause suffering of some description. So, yeah, for me, it's been interesting. I'm acclimatizing to being cold. I wasn't cold for a year living in Thailand, so it's been a little bit nippy the last few mornings around here. But also, I think I might have spoke to you when we played golf last week, like coming, because we're kind of like isolated, being on Koh Samui and Ireland, and it was kind of just me, Mel, and Tommy, and we had some locals that we were friends with, and that, but we're kind of isolated from our main family and friendship group. So we're kind of isolated to an extent, and then we go from that into full isolation in quarantine up in Sydney. And then it was kind of, because I'm quite a social person, social's quite high on my hierarchy of values. And so when we came out and got back to Melbourne, I spent that week like catching up every day with friends and doing various things. And I mentioned to you, it was actually a little bit overwhelming kind of for the system. I found myself actually slightly disassociating so much. I wasn't in any distress or anything, but I found myself kind of, I wasn't quite in my body, because, all of a sudden I've gone from very little stimulus to a lot of stimulus.
Well, it's a lot of energy hitting you as well. And I had the same experience when I came in. I did the 10-day Vipassana retreat, but not talking for 10 days, not looking at anyone for 10 days. It's only a 10-day block, but coming out of that took me 3 days to readjust, because you go from nothing to everything. So that polarity was there again, that we'll talk about later as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what it was like. It was just sort of this, I found myself, maybe it was the golf, but kind of the day after we caught up, I kind of found myself actually sinking back into my body again.
It was probably me. I probably just, on some subconscious level, just created some ease and some
Maybe
peace.
it was those big bananas that we had in the bush together.
Oh God. Yeah. I'm glad we didn't look at each other in the eye while we're trying to eat those. Question for you: did Dad have the golf cart charged for you when you got down there?
He said it's all good to go. I'm going to take it out this afternoon.
Okay.
They've got a wedding to go to, so they're heading off soon somewhere. But he said it should be all fine and ready to go. So I will find out this afternoon whether I start it and it starts or not, or I get 4 holes in and it runs out of juice.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. I got to walk back. You said that we're going through that period of change, and then you touched on the law of nature, that everything's impermanent, everything's constantly in change. So I suppose our whole life is a period of change, isn't it? And the Buddha said that suffering occurs when we try and make permanent that which is not permanent, or which everything is not permanent. So if we expect, you know, Shout out to Shane and Alicia. Their puppy dog passed away this week.
Yes.
Speaking of impermanence, so to all those of
Condolences.
you with fur babies, just go and give them an extra big hug today. Um, yeah, but and we talk about suffering and unnecessary suffering as well. So, the first of the noble truths, to live is to suffer. So we're going to experience loss and grief. And I had a client the other day said he was driving along and he's got this overwhelming sense of sadness. And I said to him, okay, was that a healthy emotional response? And he's like, what do you mean? I felt sad. It wasn't good. And I was like, it didn't feel pleasant, but did someone pass away? Did you get fired? Did your partner break up with you? Did something happen? Because being sad is still a healthy emotional response in the right circumstances. And he had no idea, but he had an aversion to feeling sad. So he didn't want to feel sad. So he went in. He was experiencing some suffering, but then he turned it into unnecessary suffering by getting distorted
Yeah.
at what he was experiencing.
What I find, it's like, but as a culture, I think I think both male and female, there's this, cultural indoctrination which gives us this aversion to a lot of these, negative emotions. I'm doing air
Mm,
quotes there because we don't, there's no negative and positive emotions. But it just helps to give us a frame of reference for guys. I find they go in, when their sadness comes up, they kind of get angry that they're sad. It's like, stop being
yeah,
fucking sad. So then it starts
and
this loop that
they're
feeds
getting
off each other.
triggered. So stimulus is external and internal. So external is what we experience in the outside world, but internally it's what we experience. And our emotions are our thoughts. So you're cruising along, and then you get a feeling, and then you get so that stimulus arises, and then you get triggered at that stimulus. So you create, because you've got an aversion to it, you don't want to feel it, and then it just deepens that experience of
Yep.
it. So you're just manifesting more of what you don't want.
Whatever we resist persists. It's very, very
Yeah,
true, and then we get that cycle. And then I found then that's kind of the male go-to. It's this, I'm angry that I'm sad, and that loop starts perpetuating. And then a lot of females, is based on programming from that point of view, is like, I'm sad, but I need to be worrying about other people. That's so I feel
mm,
selfish
mm.
that I'm wallowing in my
Yeah.
sadness. And so
So
it's like,
then guilt pops up for them, which is another. There's four forms of suffering in what the work we do, and guilt is one of those. So
so they've
yeah,
got
I'm
like
feeling.
a guilt and sad loop, and the guy's got a
Yeah,
angry
I'm
sad loop.
feeling sad, which is a healthy emotional response, which is necessary suffering. But then they'll apply a distortion to it and then create guilt, which is unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with sadness. Like right now, obviously, Shane will be going through a deep sadness and a grieving
yeah,
process because puppy's passed away. But the reason why we feel sad in that situation is because we cared so much. It's
yeah.
because we
Well,
loved so
the
much.
depth of our attachment it creates the depth of our suffering. So yeah, the suffering is the attachment is the source of all suffering. So we get attached to our pets and our family and friends and whatever. So when they leave for whatever reason, there's that detachment. But instead of going into a sense of gratitude and being thankful for the time they had with them and loving all of that stuff and go into constructive thinking, human nature is to go into that destructive thinking and go, well, this is fucked. It's not fair. They shouldn't have left. That shouldn't have happened. Why they've left too early? Like even that they're gone too soon.
Mm.
That's a human distortion being applied there because what is too soon? It's too soon for what you think
Well,
should
it's
happen.
our own, it's that person's judgment, isn't it? Well, it's like
Yeah,
I wanted them around longer, or
yeah.
statistically, people should live this long, and they lived a little bit less than that. It's a
So
person's
instantly
judgment.
the ego kicks in. It's
Yeah.
like I'm not getting what I want.
Yeah, and so I think what happens, we get caught up in that. We spend so much of our life trying to get things how we want them, and then we'll have these fleeting moments where we're like, I think everything's the way I want. Okay, I've got my partner here. I think work hasn't been an absolute bitch the last few weeks. Well, I've got a little bit of money. Like we get things how we want them, and then it's like we want to lock it in and have it stay that way
We
forever.
want to make it permanent.
Yeah, it's like we want to turn two keys,
Yeah.
synchronously and go,
Chink,
okay,
chink.
locked in. But let's if you play that out and say, well, let's say that you did that and you said, okay, I've locked everything in my relationship, my friendships, my work, everything's going to stay the same.
Life is perfect.
Fast forward a few weeks, a few months, a few years, and you would be bored as hell.
Bored.
You would. What happened if you asked the genie, if you had a genie and it was like your last wish, and no, sorry, if you had the three wishes and you said, okay, I want everything to lock in and stay the same, it'd be a couple of months down the road, even a couple of weeks, and you'd be begging that genie for your second wish to make change a possibility again because you'd be so incredibly bored.
Yep. And I was talking to someone the other day about how those periods of our life where we are challenged really creates the strongest memories. So if everything's perfect and the seas are calm and smooth and there's smooth sailing or whatever, you're not going to have anything that stands out to reflect on or to remember. So yeah, adversity doesn't feel good when you're in it, but it's character revealing and character defining, and it does create that bank of memories that we can look back on. Oh, I remember when we walked from Melbourne to New South Wales and we did this and we did that. Like, we had to sleep on the side of the road, and the weird priest tried to pick us up, and that was getting out of your comfort zone, and you're alive there. You're experiencing things. You're not in that comfort zone, which is what nearly every human on earth is trying to do, is to find a comfort zone and then lock that into place.
Yeah, it gives you a reference point, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
it's like you were saying after the missions or camps, whatever you're going with the army, and you just wanted to brush your teeth and have a nice warm shower. And it's like we brush our teeth and have a shower every day, and it's not like something we're really desperately looking forward to. We kind of take it for granted. But if you're in a situation where you can't have that and you've been through some adversity, brushing your teeth in a hot shower feels like heaven. But you have them every day, and you're like, this doesn't feel like heaven. It's just it's nice, whatever.
Yeah.
Because you had a reference point.
That's what we do.
Because otherwise, if we don't have a reference point, then this perfect or amazing life that we don't want to change loses all novelty because we have no reference point there anymore. And all of a sudden, as human beings, we love novelty, and we love change, even though we don't like to admit it. We love it because I think back now, and when we were starting the center, and we were trying to get together money for the month's rent, and it was this battle, and it was all full on, and I'd be driving to mum and dad's for dinner because I didn't have money for dinner that night, and I look back now and talk with Mel, and we're like, fucking hell, that was amazing. But at the time I'm like, oh, this is pretty fucked up, because we have that reference
in movies when a couple move into a house and they've got nothing, they've got a mattress on the floor and an old kettle from the op shop or something, and then over the years you gradually start building a construction. So you got to start with nothing and then build on it. You can't just go in and just want it all right now, because there's no depth to that. There's no
well, it's like
growth is what we're really doing. So everything is constantly in change. So that's that growth. We need to keep growing.
It's like people who want a quick fix, and it's like, let's say there's two people and one of them, they both end up with $1 million, right? But one of them, worked their ass off for 10 years and put in all this work and had all these experiences, and they get to the end of 10 years and they've got this $1 million and they're financially independent. And then the other person just won the lottery and won $1 million overnight. Who's more satisfied with that $1 million? And this is a lot of the reason why, lottery winners, most of them end up losing all the money. Because I can't look back and value it and be really proud and go, wow, look at that journey I went on. And I earned that because I built that myself.
Dad said to me once, he said, nothing in life worth having comes easy. And I didn't, as a kid, I didn't understand that at the time, but now looking back as an adult, I'm like, damn straight. Like, when you have to work through adversity, when you have to, if you're in a relationship, you and your partner have to work through things. You come out the other side, and you're stronger for it. The relationship's stronger, the bond between you is stronger, or whatnot. So it's that we can't run away from adversity or hope we never experience adversity. It's that, go back to the Stoics, amor fati, a love of fate. Oh, and that's what I said to this client the other day about when he felt sad. I said, when because we talk about treating feelings like a visitor. And so I said, when sadness turns up and knocks on my door, knock, 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 and I open the door, I'm like, oh, it's sadness. I'm like, oh, hello. And then they'll spend whatever time they need to there, and then they'll leave. But then when happiness turns up and knocks on the door, and knock, 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 and I open the door, I'm like, oh, hello. I treat them both equally
Mm.
because I don't go into that binary. This is a good feeling or that's a bad feeling. I just acknowledge that they're both feelings on the spectrum of human emotions. This is my mental health that we're dealing with here. So I'm not going to hate that one and love that one. That just would exacerbate whatever's going on. So it's just
I like that visual. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking now. It's like if we're using that same analogy, sadness come knock at the door, and we open the door, and we're like, oh no, I don't want to speak to you.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so what happens? Sadness stays at the door and starts knocking
Sadness kicks the
louder,
door in and moves in. He
and
starts bringing all his
then
buddies around.
yeah, and then anger comes up, and you're like, no, not letting you in. Then like there's a bunch of people at the door, and then happiness. Then you come in, the rest you stay out. And so you're in there trying to have a good time with happiness, but there's all these bangs at the door that are just actually even distracting you from spending time with happiness because you didn't acknowledge them. And all of a sudden you've got to, instead of having these feelings in for tea and they come and go, you've got this party and people trying to gate crash and noise, and that's where
Gets
a lot
out
of
of
people are
control.
emotionally, I think.
Yeah,
Out of control. Yeah.
yeah. So once again, something happens that you experience loss. You have an attachment to someone or something, and the law of nature kicks in. The expiry date arrives, and everything's impermanent. So that thing goes. So sadness is going to rock up because the depth of your attachment is going to create the depth of the period of time that sadness turns up. Yeah. So if I really love Polly, my dog, which I do, she's old now, she's got arthritis and everything. So yeah, the reality is she's not going to be here for I don't know much more time, 1 or 2 years maybe if we're lucky. Um, when that when that expiry date arrives, I'm going to feel, as you did with your dog, a deep sense of loss. But what I'm not going to do is let that emotion that knocks on the door, that grief, that sadness, invite all his buddies in and take over, because I'm just going to sit with it and treat that emotion with respect because it's a healthy emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I've processed it and done enough of it, it'll just leave of its own accord. And then the next day, happiness will turn up or something. So I don't want to be afraid of or have that aversion because attachment comes in two forms. It's a craving, but it's also an aversion. It's a I want and I don't want. I want to be happy. I don't want to be happy. I don't want to be sad. Sorry. So either form of those attachments is still going to create more suffering.
Yeah. And I found just something that happened with me. You just sort of triggered a memory for me when, Disco, my puppy died. And obviously I was just so sad and weeping and that kind of thing. And Tommy was a little baby then. And I remember, because it happened, at home and everything. And I think he came out and I remember my kind of inclination. And it's funny. It's like an automatic thing because I know otherwise. But like when he came out, I went to kind of like pull myself together. It was kind of, and I think that's that comes down to this indoctrination as a culture as well. Like don't look vulnerable or in front of other people or set a good example. And I found myself doing that, and then I was my knowing. I override that and like grabbed Tommy on my knee and just said, he was obviously a little baby, but I said, about our puppy's died and Daddy's really, really sad, and then just let myself cry. But I really remember now that, as soon as he came out, like trying to get myself together. And it's like, that's a problem as well, because we do that a lot. We try and pull ourselves together, around people and that kind of thing. And then we never actually have that feeling fully in for tea. It's kind of ushing it out the back door so no one will see. So go out the back door, someone's around the front. Hide in the closet.
then you got this closet full of emotions,
Or
just
the
all
closet
go.
shaking.
Yeah, and
What's
it's
going
like,
on in the closet? Nothing, nothing, nothing.
Anger, there you are. Where have you been? Oh no, I stuck me in this closet the other day. Guilt, you're in here too.
Been in here for fucking weeks.
And
We're hungry.
I'm just getting more and more agitated. Uh, it's and go back to the episode we did with Matthew Pitt, my mate, and his the passing of his wife. And he spoke about letting it in and then letting it out, but he didn't get distorted. He didn't apologize for his feelings in front of his kids. He didn't. There wasn't a sense of shame over being a human and having emotions. He had a really healthy emotional response that was in proportion to what he and his family were experiencing. So and it takes more strength to do that than it takes to hide and be ashamed or embarrassed. So he really stood in his power and just went, yeah, I'm giving myself permission to go through this process, and the kids are going to see it, and I'm gonna guide them because I'm going to be okay. So I'll be in a position where I can then help the kids as well. If he had have denied his emotions or hidden them or whatever, it would have elongated the process and brought up so much more. And he would have been in survival mode for a lot longer, and then he wouldn't have been there to help his kids.
Of
So,
course. And it's also like you're teaching them such a profound lesson in that moment. Because when we
mm,
think that, oh, I'm going to hide, I'm hiding this emotion from my kids, and we think we're doing a good job, they pick up on so much more than you realize. So they know that you're hiding it, even if you think you're doing a wonderful job. So in that moment, you're kind of teaching your children, oh, okay, so I'm understanding when I'm going through something heavy, I've got to just suck that up and hold it in, and you're kind of teaching them that for the future. Whereas if you can do that stronger thing and show those emotions and explain why you're going through it and be authentic, then you're kind of
mm.
teaching your kids it's okay. It's okay to kind of let go. It's okay to be open and that when something has happened like that.
And what a wonderful emotional family heirloom to hand down.
Mm.
Teaching your kids how to have a healthy emotional response
I think
instead
that's
of
the best heirloom you can pass down.
the most valuable one, better than a chest of drawers.
We go, we yeah, I've been speaking a little bit about this, idea of polarity and I suppose the dualistic nature of what it is like to be here. It's like there's so many. It's like I feel you can't experience one thing without experiencing its opposite. They're kind of the two sides of the one coin. I was listening to a podcast the other week, and this fellow, I'd never heard of him. He's been interviewed, and I was really digging what he was talking about. And the interviewer was saying like, it seems like we've got this history as a collective where we've, been ruled by kings and emperors and dictators and this kind of thing, and we're destroying each other and the planet and everything. And this guy just said, we're destroying each other and the planet because we don't know how not to. And he goes, so we're learning how not to by doing it. Is that
Mhm.
you can't learn how to do something kind of without understanding or learning the opposite. And I was kind of like, fuck, that really resonated with me and is so true, because like I believe you can't really have a good life until you've had a shit one. Because you haven't got a
That's why
reference
there's
point.
there's so much value in all those times of adversity. So that I talk about it all the time. The the depth of our struggles creates the height of our success or achievement or whatever you want to call it. The depth of our low creates the depth of our high, I suppose.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's like if I go, I think you've said it before, it's like if I'm go down to a -2, then I'll
Yeah,
go to a +2. But if I go -10, I'll go to a +10, you know?
and so that makes me, we've been talking about the future of the mental health industry in Australia and whatever, and lived experience practitioners, and I'm in talks with the Defence Force Ombudsman at the moment, and the Defence Force in you know, learning how we can help people who are in a similar situation to me come out and care for them a lot better. And I said, I think what these people need is people who have been through it, because you can sit there and learn how to build a house, but until you've built the house, you don't really know how to do it.
Mm.
So all these clinicians, and a lot of them are amazing, do wonderful jobs, and have great insights and everything. But for me, I'd rather sit with someone who's actually been through it and come out the other side and has built the house and gone, oh, there's this idea or philosophy that should go there, but I tried that, and in reality, it doesn't actually work. It's a great idea, but the reality of it is very different. So we had to adapt and do this instead. And
Mm.
so you've got that, and Buddhism talks about it all the time. It's experiential wisdom. You can't learn anything unless you go through it and experience it. So,
Mm, that's
uh,
true. I
um,
also think there's a disconnect with a lot of people with their own direct experience. Like it's kind of like we have this human experience, and I feel like humans kind of go. It shows up in different forms, more socially accepted forms, less socially accepted forms. But these different things that we go through show up kind of in all humans. But a lot of people and practitioners I see, they haven't met themselves in the depths of these
mm,
things. Let's say that a lot of the issue, because I deal with a lot of people struggling with addiction, and a lot of the issue they've had is like, yeah, I've been to psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever it was, and they kind of have no idea about what it's like. And they've kind
yeah,
of they're just that they've got the text that they've read, and they're
yeah,
like, oh, it's a
yeah.
terrible drug and blah blah blah. But it's like, yes, having someone with lived experience is fantastic, but also a lot of the time that practitioner just they've struggled with addiction themselves in some form, but they haven't met themselves there and acknowledged it and kind of been through the process of seeing that. So if they did that really, really deep work, they'd be able to so much more empathize and be able to be on the same wavelength as that person in front of them, because they realize they've been through addictive stuff themselves. And it may be have just been in some socially acceptable form of, could be a food or just a couple of drinks or that kind of thing, but they just haven't kind of recognized that in themselves.
Mm. And just as clinicians out there, clinical psychologists or psychiatrists or whatever, some are great and some are terrible. Same with lived experience practitioners. I know some lived experience
Yeah.
practitioners who are still unbalanced in terms of the more in the advocacy. It's more of the
Plenty of those.
oh, fuck it, and they're not great for the industry as well.
Ah, but it's the same thing. It's like, there's some good and shit plumbers. There's some good and shit surveyors. It's
Golfers.
do I just remembered that podcast I was listening to. It was on the way to golf last week,
Ah,
and because I paused the podcast and I'm like, fuck, okay, yeah, we have to do the opposite. And then I'm like, I was thinking, so I want to play good golf, but it's like I have to play shit golf to be able to play good golf. I can't skip that part. So then it's like,
yeah.
if I'm playing golf, I'm on the way to good golf, so I can be happy no matter what.
So how's this? Right? Jordan Spieth, who's a very, very good golfer in the US Pro Tour, um, he came out of the gates early in his career and is just slaying it like they're like this kid's a phenomenon. He was just smashing everything. And then he went through a funk, and the pressure of the media, the expectations of society. I've got clients dealing with these expectations of family and everything. It's so hard to protect yourself from that.
Mm.
But he's done an amazing job of just of shutting all that out. Um, but he understands the nature of it as well. That's the thing. He doesn't have an aversion to it or think they shouldn't be doing it. He understands that's the nature of the media industry. So he's not getting agitated at them asking all these questions because he has this depth of understanding. So
Yeah,
he's
it's
gone
like
through
if
this.
you like typed in his name in Google at Jordan Spieth, it'd come up one of the first suggestions, like what happened to Jordan Spieth, because he
Yeah, because it was such a change. But he's lent into this sense of trust in himself that he's got the game, but he understands it. And I've been talking to so many clients about this concept. It's weird to say it. This concept of understanding, but understanding is the cornerstone to love. When we can understand something, um, when we get it, it doesn't trigger us anymore.
Mhm.
So the understanding our partners or understanding society or understanding the way of the world, understanding the law of nature. If we can understand things, we're so much more at peace with it. So he understands himself. He understands that there's an ebb and a flow to his skills. Some days he'll hit it great, some days he'll hit it bad. But when he's hitting it bad, there's an old school philosophy in golf that um, you find it in the dirt. You find your game in the dirt. So you just go out and you hit 1,000 balls on the range. You just keep hitting ball after ball after ball, and you'll find it there. And so that to me is a sense of force, right? You're forcing it. I'm forcing it. Jordan Spieth went with a sense of flow, and he went, when I'm hitting it bad, I'm not going to go to the range and hit balls. I'm just going to wait patiently and just practice my fundamentals and do that sort of thing. But when I go back into that flow, when I start hitting it well again, that's when I'm going to go to the range and hit 1,000 balls because I'm going to ingrain all the good
Mhm.
stuff. And I think I spoke about this on a podcast ages ago, but it just made so much sense that um, understanding our nature and the outside nature and the nature of everything really it takes so much less energy to keep moving because we're not in conflict or getting angry or upset or a lot of unnecessary suffering, which is going to take us away from what we're trying to achieve, which is to get our golf game back on track.
Yeah. Just really important. I think, yeah, by knowing who he was able to really trust that the outcome would happen. And we're kind of bringing him up as well because he won his first tournament in nearly 4 years and then finished, I think, third at the
Well,
Masters.
his last 8 starts, have been in the top 10.
Yeah. So
So
it's is the flow is coming through.
he's back, and everyone's going, he's back, and it's so weird to look at it. I was chatting with a client the other day about this concept of understanding, and I said if someone gets a puppy dog and they bring it home and then they put the dog down and they go off and cook dinner and and they come back and the dog has chewed their shoes and done a poo on the floor, and that person gets angry or upset at the puppy dog, they don't understand the nature of the dog.
Mm.
So it speaks of an ignorance in that person. It says nothing at all about the dog. The dog is just being a puppy. Is just being a puppy. It doesn't have control over its bladder. It hasn't learned the human model, which is we don't poo or pee inside the place where we
Has
live.
no concept of that.
No idea whatsoever. But we impose our expectations and beliefs. And how? What are you doing pooing there? You don't poo, are you? You idiot! And
Naughty,
smack the dog.
naughty.
And yeah, naughty. And smack the dog. And the dog's like, "What the fuck? Where am I? Why am I living here? This is
Yeah,
terrible."
that's
Because
abuse.
we can't. Yeah, it is abuse, and we don't understand it. Parents with kids in supermarkets, it's the child's nature to want lollies.
Hmm.
If you take a child into a supermarket with all this marketing glitz and glamour and expect the child just to walk through and go, I'm perfectly at peace. I do not want any of the shiny objects that are here, and I'm quite content within myself. And to come out, mother, have you finished your shopping? Wonderful. Let's carry on with our day. If you expect it,
Let me help you carry those, mother. Let me pay. I've got it this time, mother. No problem.
this one's on me, mother. You got the last one.
Get this piggy bank out. No problem, mother. I'll see you at the car. No problem.
If you expect the child to do that, then you are being irrational. You have to go into these situations with an understanding that the child is going to go, I want this, I want that, that's cool, mummy, can I? And if you react and get upset to that child, that says more about you than it says about the child.
Yeah. We've spoken about this a number of times. It's like then if you say no and the child emotionally reacts, it's like that's the whole part of being a kid is I'm learning how to emotionally regulate because I don't have the ability to do it. So then to get angry at a kid for not being able to emotionally regulate is well, like you said, it's not understanding the nature of what's happening, and you're then emotionally reacting, so you're being a child as well. Um,
Exactly.
so this is if we don't understand the situation, then we're going to suffer. It's so true. And with coming back to Jordan Spieth, we're trying to link it in with, making change and with our mental health and that kind of thing. He's kind of under the microscope of all this media and everything, And it's like, yeah, Jordan Spieth's back. It's like he can go anywhere. He's been playing golf. He's been hitting balls at the range. He's been doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's a real sense of maturity and trust in himself, like you said. And like what happens a lot of the time when we make change, whether it's in our life with our mental health, where we're changing some behaviors, is that if we can really know what we're doing is the best for us, and we can, and through the process, you really should be getting a good understanding of who you are as a human being, because you're working out, why have I gone down this route of these certain patterns, or why haven't I been able to make change in my life in these areas? Because what happens, a lot of people get tripped up because they make change and they start moving in the right direction, but there's kind of this lag period, whether it's friends, family, that kind of thing, and it takes them a while to adjust to your changed behaviors.
Takes them 3 months on average. I reckon 3 months for those around us
That
to see.
that sounds
change.
about right. If I'm just on anecdotal experience of clients and everything, that seems about right. And so a lot of people in that 3-month window, if they haven't really got a good understanding and good trust in what they're doing and who they are as a human being, can kind of slip back into old habits, because like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. So say it's drugs. I've stopped using drugs, but your family is still expecting you to fuck up. So it's like they can't get as excited as I am about the changes I've made, because it's like the character in their movie is playing off a different script, and it's going to take me a little bit of time to adjust to that new script. Also, they're protecting themselves because they've probably been hurt in the past, which is hard for people to understand as well.
And they don't trust you yet, because even though you may trust yourself, they don't trust you yet because they haven't had enough experience to create that foundation of trust again.
So it's like your inner voice has to be stronger than the external voices, and that gets very hard because we're so worried about what other people think. We're worried about being judged. We're worried about what other people are thinking about us. So people like Jordan speaking that process, sounds like his inner voice has still remained stronger than the thousands of voices in the industry of golf, with the media, with all people writing online. His inner voice sounds stronger, whereas a lot of people can let those external voices bleed into their mind, and now the thoughts that they're having aren't even theirs. There are people who don't really know.
That tells you how emotionally intelligent Jordan is, and how mentally strong he is, and that's what I saw when he first came out. How his the mental part of his game was probably, for me, his greatest weapon, because he didn't get flustered when his ball was in a bad lie. He'd just walk up to it and he'd be like, right, now this is interesting. This isn't. He didn't go into. There was no distortions with him on the course. There wasn't a, oh fuck, I can't believe that's there. And
what a bad break.
Once you get distorted, you're not present. When you're not present, you can't make decisions that moment requires. So many golfers go, oh, I can't believe that. But can turn to their caddy, can you believe that's there? How the fuck did that happen? And as soon as you're in that space, you're gone. So yeah, I always based on it, I had a belief that Jordan would turn his game around and come back and start winning tournaments again. He just needed time, as we all do when we're experiencing change. If we try and force it, or wish it was here now, or whatever, if we have an aversion to what we're experiencing through that change, it's just going to lengthen that period of time until we achieve our goal.
Yeah, so it's like the bad break of being in a bad lie is like, let's say I've stopped some sort of bad behavior, and after a month or two, I'll start talking to a family member about it, and they're like, yeah, well, we'll just see when you fuck up again. And then you really let that get to you and say that shouldn't have happened. And this is when a lot of people can get into a lot of cognitive distortion, instead of just saying, okay, they're still adjusting to my change, but I'm still strong in what I want and where I'm going. And I'm not going to let that voice enter my mind and become mine, because a lot of people then take kind of the easy option in the moment, go, oh, if they're expecting me to fuck up, I'll just do it. If that's how people see me anyway, because we just didn't get through that period of change where other people could start to trust us again.
I find it really interesting how two people will respond completely differently to the same stimulus. So it's what you said then about someone says, oh, you're going to fuck up, and they go, well, I may as well just do it anyway. That person will go down that path, and that will trigger them to go down that path, where another person will sit there and go, oh, I hear what you're saying, and I understand why you're doing that, but I'm just going to reinforce to you, because you don't trust me, that no, I've got this, and it's okay that you don't believe me now. So, but in time, it'll happen. So
yeah, that's a real someone understanding other people's map of the world.
I know,
which is a big part of this work, isn't it?
Yeah.
because a lot of people are stuck in their map of the
understanding.
world, and they can't understand that everybody's got a different map. So they think that their map is the same as everybody else's map. So then when someone conflicts with that, we start to go into this, we get very defensive because we're like, why can't you see? And it's like, well, they've had different life experiences that have made up their map.
My map's better than yours. The ego kicks in. My map's better than yours.
It's got to be
You're
right.
operating off my map. Yeah.
Come look, my map's better. But yeah, we're all of different map. Like two people can, walk into the same room and just see something completely different. And that can be because, maybe they're going to a talk and someone goes, that was a fantastic talk. That was awesome. The other one's like, I did not like that guy. There's something wrong about him. But maybe that guy was wearing a sweater, or he spoke the same as an uncle that was a shit to you when you were a kid, or something like that. Just the map's different, so the filters are different. And either one's right. It's just a subjective experience. So in essence, we're all experiencing a reflection of our own map.
Yeah. It was interesting. I just had the recollection then of a thought I had earlier when you spoke about Tats Lotto. And last night was a $50 million draw or something, so I bought a Tats Lotto ticket. And when I was buying the Tats Lotto ticket, and it's even interesting that I bought a Tats Lotto ticket. Like, I wouldn't know what the fuck to do with $50 million. So I don't know why I bought a Tats Lotto ticket. Anyway, but I was looking at the other lotteries, and there was a $8 million one and a $2 million one, and I don't know, whatever they are. I was looking through and I'm like, no. I want the biggest. I want to try and win the biggest. I'm just sitting here going, what's wrong with the $2 million one? Like, what?
It's like you'd be pissed off if you won the $2 million.
And that's the ego in play. That's hilarious.
That's the ego in action.
That's not enough. It's not enough. It's comparing. I'm comparing 2 million to 50 million. I want the 50 million because why?
It's like if there was a 200 million one, you'd be like, oh fuck the 50 million one. I want the 200 million one. It never stops. That's why if 2 million was the highest and the next one was like 500 grand, you'd be like, I want the 2 million. But it's like all of a sudden the 2 million is perceived as not enough because it's in the context of these other range of numbers, and the ego wants the most.
We're funny creatures, aren't we?
We're so funny.
We really are. And that's the thing as well. It's I love my clients because they ask such wonderful questions. And one the other day was asking about, getting on this path, and it's how it's continual. You have to keep going. There's no end to this work. It's just once you start doing the work, it actually gets harder because you start seeing more, and it's a.
More of the unconscious becomes conscious.
Yeah,
so it's like some people go, oh, I feel like I've gone downhill or something. It's like I promise you haven't gone downhill. You're just so much more conscious of all your unconscious bullshit. So instead of seeing a little sliver, you're seeing a lot more of through the matrix.
Seeing what's really going on. You're becoming more woke. You're becoming more awake to
the dream.
Well, yeah, awake to the nature of how our minds are. And yeah, so this client was talking about it. I said it's like it's never ending because it's like a computer game, and it's like we get to the end of something and we defeat the boss, but then we go to the next level, and then there's another level after that, and there's another level. And so it's a never-ending game. We just got to keep defeating all these bosses, and the ego is usually at the end of the stage, and we got to keep defeating the ego. That's
another great analogy from you, Nick. You're on fire with these today, because it's what happens. Because what happens, we say that, oh, I like it. So it's like we go and we defeat the boss, and then we go to the next one. But say the boss is a problem or an issue or a period we're having in our life. But then most people have this idea in their head that when I beat the first boss, then I have no problems anymore. Whereas,
but people also think that the problem is my work or my kids or my job or something. But it's not. The problem is your attachment to what you think it should be or whatever. So that's why the boss is always ourself. We are always
in disguise.
Yeah, we are.
It's like we defeat the boss and pull off the mask, and it's us. And we're like, again.
It's like Scooby-Doo. Yeah. Like a Scooby-Doo.
If it wasn't for you to have kids.
So we're always
could have been right.
we're always trying to conquer ourselves and defeat ourselves. I saw this cool thing on social media the other day. There is no actual God or Satan. God is actually just a symbol for higher consciousness, and Satan is a symbol for the ego. You must use high consciousness to overcome your lower ego desires.
Hmm. Yeah, this is the once again we're talking about polarity here, aren't we?
Yeah.
It's like the analogy of heaven and hell, the light and the dark, the good and the evil. You know, it's this polarity that human beings seem to have, and it's like we don't. It's like we can't. Heaven and hell can be tasted here on Earth, you know, and but we can't really understand and taste heaven until we've gone to the depths of hell.
Well, it's peace and war. It's love and hate. It's yeah. You can't have one without the other.
And this is why we're like you look at all movies or plays, all art that we put together as human beings. And it's not, we don't go and watch a movie of someone who just everything's going perfect, and then the movie ends, everything just went perfect. It's like that's why the hero's journey is a thing. You know, there has to be challenges met along the way, and then someone who's going to help us, and then you know if it's a love story, another lover competing for their attention. There's always this challenge, and at the end there's some sort of resolution. The resolution can look different, but there has to go on that journey. It can't just be everything's great all the time.
I love reading fantasy books, and there's so much adversity in them. And but the yeah, it's the characters grow so much through the books when it's a really well written book, and that's what it's really attractive to me is just seeing this journey, this process happening and unfolding.
Yeah, so it's like we started off here. We said everyone wants when everything's going good to lock that in place. So we want that for our own life. But if we read a book, watched a movie, TV series where everything went perfect, we'd go, "That was fucking so shit."
But conversely, if we see someone overcome challenges and rise up and everything, we're rooting for them. We're like,
Mm,
yeah, go, go, go. But we don't do that for ourselves. We're like, no, no, avoid crisis, avoid adversity, hide in your comfort zone.
yeah.
We're silly. I
It's like
read,
we love the story of an underdog, don't we? Mel always
yeah,
says that if it's something to do with sport or I'm watching something, she goes, "You love an underdog, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah," because no one expects it of them, you know, that kind of thing.
David and Goliath, David and
Yeah,
Goliath.
yeah, exactly.
So I've got these Buddhist cards at work, and I get clients to pick one. Um, And the client picked the path the other day, and this is the client that was talking about, it's never ending. So it's amazing how apt the cards are for what a client's going through. And the Buddha said that no one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path.
Yep.
So the path to enlightenment is an
How's that for
endless
accountability?
process.
Sorry to cut you off, but
Mm.
how's that for accountability? No one's going to
Uh,
save you. You know, you got to do it
but
yourself.
hear how different it is to other, well, Buddhism's not a religion, but hear how different it is to Christianity or something where it's like, he's our savior.
Yeah, it's like
And the Buddha's like,
hand yourself over to this higher
yeah.
power. Yeah.
And Buddha's like, fuck that, do it yourself. And I catch
Are you
myself,
quoting the Buddha there?
I am.
Buddha,
Fuck
fuck
that,
that, do it yourself.
do it yourself. I'm putting it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, just a Buddha meditating, and then in quotation marks, fuck that, do it yourself, Buddha.
So and it goes on to say the path to enlightenment is an endless process. You have to practice diligently and with discipline. Eventually, you will become the path itself, and fewer struggles and sufferings will come your way. So it's true. It's like going to the gym. If you've never gone to the gym before, your body needs to meet resistance in order to get stronger. So you turn up to the gym, you're quite weak physically, and you start with light weights. But it's like once you can smash out 12 of these, three sets of 12, then you step up to the next weight. And so you've defeated those weights, you go to the next weight, and then you keep lifting them and you defeat them. So, it's weird. Physically, we want to strengthen and grow when we put ourselves in those positions, but mentally or emotionally, we're afraid of growth. So there's a bit of a paradox going on there.
Mm. Yeah, so I think we have to wrap up. You're off to a 90th birthday, which
And
will be a
so
bloody
I'm going to party
rager.
like it's eight. I'm going to
Rager.
party like it's 1842.
How would they party in 1842? What do you reckon?
They'd be standing around and having a sherry or something, and it depends where you are, I
It
suppose.
does. It does. A sherry sounds about
Yeah,
right. Sherry and
yeah,
like a pipe, smoking a bit of tobacco or something in there.
yeah.
Um,
It'll either be very prim and proper, or it'll be debauchery.
go the
Just
debauchery, I reckon.
it just depends. It
They're
depends where you
the
are
two
in the.
polarities.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Just to wrap it up, everyone, I think have a think that even if you feel like you're falling short in some area of your life or in all areas of your life, maybe think that maybe I'm just in the process of learning how to not do this. And if I think what I gathered from that is it doesn't matter where you are kind of on the spectrum, no point is better than the other. You know what I mean?
No, that's we've got to use that spectrum thinking instead of that binary thinking, good, bad, right, wrong. It's just there's two ends to a spectrum, and it's about finding the balance.
Yep. And the part, when we look back on the parts that we were so-called struggling, they're often the parts we look back on with the fondest memories. And that could be the
Mm.
moment that you're in right now, but we don't have that foresight that we'll look back one day and realize, hey, maybe I should have enjoyed that part of the journey a little bit more.
But just trust that everything is impermanence. This whatever you're experiencing won't last. And if it's something pleasant that you're experiencing, savor it now, but don't get attached to wanting it to stay around forever. And if it's something unpleasant that you're experiencing now, do exactly the same thing. Just it's not going to last. So don't have an aversion to experiencing it. Trust that there's an ebb and flow to everything.
And we'll just leave you with the beautiful words of the Buddha. Fuck that, do it yourself.
That's my next social media post.
So good. All right, everyone, we'll see you next week.
Peace out.
Peace.